Senator John Thune of South Dakota is chairman of the Senate Republican Conference. That's the third highest ranking position in the United States Senate. We welcome him today from the Russell Rotunda on Capitol Hill. Welcome back to the program, Senator. Good to have you with us.
Thanks, David. Nice to be with you.
Let's start with tax reform and the way it's playing out. We can't talk about tax reform without a budget resolution. Where is the Senate on a budget resolution? When will it pass something?
Hopefully by late Thursday, well, probably Friday morning is typically the way this works. But we have this really weird process, budget process in the Senate, which allows for what we call vote-a-rama, and that's anybody who wants to offer an amendment, and that's after the time for debate has concluded. Anybody can offer an amendment and get it voted on, and typically that runs into the wee hours of the morning. So, but I think the votes are there. I think we will get a budget resolution, and as you pointed out, without a budget resolution, there is no tax reform. So it's essential, critical that we get that across the Senate floor this week, and I think eventually we will.
And then that has to be reconciled with what was passed in the House. How difficult will that be? How different will these two resolutions be? How long will it take to get to that resolution?
Hopefully not long, because the committees, the Ways and Means Committee and the Finance Committee in the Senate, need to start writing the bills, and they can't start writing the bills until the Budget Committee and that process is concluded and gives the respective committees a number. I serve on the Senate Finance Committee. We can't start marking up a bill until we know what that number is that's given to us by the budget resolution. And so the process, hopefully, to conference the two bills, the House and the Senate, the budget resolution, won't take more than a week, two at the most. But we can't afford to lose much time because, as you know, we have we'd like to get this done by the end of the year. That's the goal. And in order to do that, we have to keep on track here.
And Senator Thune, explain how, if at all, the question of money for the wall fits into this, because we hear that that's very important for the administration. There's talk about it up on Capitol Hill. Could that hold up the process?
Well, I think that the wall issue will get addressed, but probably in a different context. It could be a year-end spending bill. There is a lot of discussion right now about how to solve immigration, how to deal with the DACA issue, and how to include in that some border security provisions. And right now, I think those discussions continue. I don't think there's anywhere close to a conclusion on that, but my guess is if that's wrapped into one of the year-end bills, it will probably be the other spending bill. We have to do a budget by December 8th. We run out of money to fund the government, and so we've got to address that issue again. I think it's more likely that wall gets addressed there. The tax bill itself most likely will be focused singularly on tax reform, perhaps a couple of other issues in there, but for the most part, it's going to be about reducing taxes on middle-income families and making us more competitive in the global marketplace.
So staying just for a moment with this spending resolution, when you start talking about that, at least our audience starts thinking about shutting down the government. Is the issue of the money for the wall so important to Republican senators that they would be willing to shut down the government?
I think that most Republican senators want to see border security enhanced. Whether that's in the form of a wall or not is, it's going to probably be up to different senators, but I know a lot of our members who believe that a wall can be a technological wall. Yes, it can be partly a physical wall. It can be a virtual wall. There are lots of ways in which you can enhance and strengthen border security that doesn't include necessarily building a physical wall. So how that's addressed in the final legislation remains to be seen, but as long as there are security enhancements that we think strengthen security at the border, I think you'll have a pretty strong Republican support for whatever ultimately emerges as part of a year-end package.
On the subject of the tax reform, we hear from the president and from Secretary Mnuchin that it is really critical that this get to the president's desk by the end of this calendar year. From where you sit, is that realistic? Do you think that that will happen?
Well, that's the goal, David. I mean, the one thing around here, there are always contingencies that can come up, and the Senate's a very unpredictable place. I think if it were left up to the House has structure and rules. They'll be able to move, I think, in a very timely and systematic way, tax reform through the Ways and Means Committee across the House floor. We've got different rules and procedures that we have to deal with here, but the goal is to try and complete this before the end of the year and to be able to put a tax reform bill on the president's desk. But the one thing I can tell you is whether it gets done at the end of the year or, sometime into next year, it will be done in this congressional cycle. We have 2 years, every Congress, and we're committed to making sure that tax reform is something that we can deliver for the American people in this Congress. And so I hope it happens by the end of the year. That's certainly the goal, and we're going to try and make that happen.
Senator Thune, another item on your agenda is the so-called subsidies for Obamacare health insurance. We heard yesterday that there is a proposed compromise between Senator Lamar and Senator Murray that would take care of this. You said that it's urgent to move this forward. I'm going to read to you now something that the president has just tweeted out. Won't surprise you, I don't think, but he said, I am supportive of Lamar, this is Lamar Alexander, as a person and also of the process, but I can never support bailing out insurance companies who have made a fortune with Obamacare. Is the president in favor of this compromise or against it?
I think we'll probably find out in due time. I think he has spoken with Lamar Alexander. As you mentioned, Lamar Alexander's been the Senate Republican who's been primarily responsible, kind of the architect behind this short-term fix. And I know that the president has had a number of conversations with him in which he encouraged Lamar to move forward to try and provide a bridge to a time when we can get a vote on repealing and replacing Obamacare. Right now, we want to make sure that there's stability in the market, and I think what they're proposing to do would enable that to happen. Obviously, most of us are still looking at the details to digest whether or not it's something that we can support, but where the president comes down will obviously be very important, I think, for a lot of our members as they decide whether or not this is something they can vote for.
Have you had a chance, Senator, to review this and decide whether you're in favor of this compromise or not?
I'm looking at it. I am also concerned about ensuring that in addition to retaining or allowing the CSRs to continue the cost sharing reduction payments that are made available to people who are in the Obamacare exchanges, that there also be a flexibility given to the states so the states can design more of their own plans and use the dollars in a more efficient way. And that's something that we're trying to determine right now, whether or not that state flexibility that has been proposed is meaningful, whether it's real. That's something that's certainly important for a lot of Republicans. But I think there are a lot of members on both sides of the aisle who want to maintain and ensure that there is stability in that individual marketplace until such time as we can have a more complete repeal and replace vote happen in the United States Senate that we can get 50-plus votes for. And so that's where we are. Whatever happens here will be a bridge. It'll be short-term, it'll be near-term until we get to the real debate.
Finally, Senator, on top of everything else, there's infrastructure. We understand that there's some talks going on with the White House and the Senate right even today about infrastructure. Should we expect, at least in 2018, a significant infrastructure bill to pass the Congress?
I certainly hope so. I think an infrastructure bill can be a big bipartisan win for this Congress. I think it's important for our economy, just like tax reform. If we want to get the growth rate back up to a more normal rate and create better paying jobs in this country and raise wages, I think tax reform is absolutely essential to that, because right now we're not competitive in the global marketplace. We're hemorrhaging jobs and companies and wages overseas, so we've got to fix that. But I think infrastructure can be a very big boost to the economy, and we are meeting today. There are a number of members of the White House team who are going to be up here meeting with members of my committee to talk about what they're thinking in terms of infrastructure, and then also to hear from our members about what our priorities are. So that's a conversation that has started, and I hope will take a more full form, but I think it's probably going to be sequenced behind tax reform. I think tax reform happens first, and then infrastructure as a follow-on.